Chronicles TV on air. We are now live in 3, 2, 1.
Like, comment, subscribe. Chronicles TV, and I'm signing. Where's the to be continued? So we're going straight into it without no freaking thing? Alrighty then. Welcome back to another episode of The Great Ace Attorney. Apparently I thought we were going to be having it to be continued and then going to trial, but I guess investigation and trial are put together. In previous episode, we were in the investigation part of episode 3. Today, we're going to the trial part. If you're happy with today's episode, make sure that like button to reach the channel. Yo! Hey, we have our sword. So this is the highest court in Great Britain, the Old Bailey. The centuries of history in this place is palpable, isn't it? It's so different to the Supreme Court in Japan. It feels both imposing and serene at the same time. The atmosphere almost makes words redundant. Whatever the country, determining a person's guilt or innocence is always a sole affair. Maybe I say something, Mr. Naruhodo? Oh, yes, what? Your eyes look ready to pop out of your head again. I know, but I just can't help it. He's a vampire. In the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I hereby declare this court to be in session. We are here today to determine the guilt or innocence of Mr. Magnus McGilded. I now call upon the counsels for the prosecution and defense to declare their willingness to proceed. The prosecution is fully prepared. That must be the Reaper of the Bailey. He really does look fully prepared to dispatch his next poor victim to the underworld. Counsel for the defense, you appear to be Eastern. Do you speak English? Huh? Oh, yes, of course, sorry. But he asked if the defense was ready, and I wouldn't be further from ready if I tried. Those eyes please me. Nipponese. Edgeworth? They shroud your fear, your doubt, your trepidation. They run wild, clinging to some phantom notion of courage. The quintessential look of sacrificial lamb. A cold shiver just ran down my spine and all the way to the tips of my toes. Now, Mr. McGilded. Yes, my lord. You stand accused of murder, a capital offense. You could be sent to the gallows if found guilty. Are you quite sure you wish to entrust your defense to this foreigner? As I've always said, my lord, tis a grand thing to give opportunities to the young. Even if the fellow is a student from some little island off in the Far East, it is not the British way to ignore the danger to yourself and give those less fortunate a fair chance. I like to think that as acts of chivalry to the great British Empire proud. Listen to McGilded. What a fine gentleman London has in him. Did you hear that he donated £5,000 to the government the other day? Mother, please, may we go and play Mr. McGilded Park? It seems as though everyone in the public gallery is firmly behind Mr. McGilded. That's definitely welcome news, and he certainly has a way with words. I'm surprised he couldn't convince anyone to defend him. Eloquently put, Mr. McGilded, and most laudable sentiments. Now, ladies and gentlemen of the court jury, I'm sure I need hardly remind you that 6 members of the public have been selected for your impartially. Are you ready to proceed? They the jury? Yes, my lord, if the task is to send riders to the gallows where they belong, I'm more than ready. At the manner his lordship always says we should dispose of rubbish promptly, naturally I agree. Ha! Any criminals here will soon be wishing they never set eyes on me. And she's usually there during court anyways. A drunk. I feel a chill.
Oh, don't mind me, my dears. I'll just be getting on with my knitting. must finish minutes for my grandson.
Ah, Mr. Naruhodo, those people are... The jury? Yes, that's something we don't have in Japan yet.
That's right, I've only read it. But here in Great Britain, the court's final verdict depends on the opinions of the 6 jurors. The judge passes sentence according to the law, but the jurors determine guilt based on common sense. So the defendant is ultimately judged from 2 completely different point of views.
But how exactly do the jurors give their verdict?
That I don't know yet, but I'm sure it'll become clear as the trial progresses.
Yes. Prosecutor Von Zykes.
Edgeworth?
My lord. It's been a number of years since we've seen you here in the courtroom. I thought you renounce... Wrong voice. Renounce your fame. I'm known as the Reaper of the Bailey, my lord. Infamy rather than fame, I would say. But yes, 5 years have passed since I last spread my wings in this capacity.
Vampire?
So what brings you back? Is there some change of circumstance of which the court should be aware? I leave that to your imagination, my lord.
So the Reaper has been out of action for 5 years. Why did he have to choose today of all days to make a comeback? Don't lose heart, Mr. Naruhodo.
As you wish, sir. The court nevertheless welcomes your return. Now then, opening statements, I think. A summary of the case, if you please. Certainly, my lord. As your lordship is aware, this is a case of overwhelming simplicity.
We must be the only ones in here who aren't aware.
The incident took place in the late evening. 3 days passed. The hour was some minutes after 10. The victim was a maker of building bricks known in the community as Thrice Fired Mason.
Sorry, thrice?
He was a very accomplished craftsman. The bricks he fired were so sad to be almost indestructible.
Yo!
The victim's corpse was discovered in an omnibus in service on the streets of London at the time. A dagger that had been thrust into the victim's abdomen is believed to be the ultimate cause of death. Here is the autopsy report from the investigating medical officer at Scotland Yard. Thank you, counsel. I shall accept that and the photograph as evidence. Photograph evidence. And one further item of evidence. The prosecution wishes to submit these as well. And these are? Good lord! Is that blood, counsel? Yes, my lord. Seized by the policemen who arrived at the scene. These gore-soaked gloves were taken from the hands of the accused when he was arrested.
What?
Mr. McGilden's gloves had blood on them? Yes, I will accept these as evidence as well.
How did I get into this? I'm backed into a corner before I even started.
Continuing. According to the driver of the omnibus, there were only 2 passengers traveling inside his vehicle at the time.
Only 2?
Obviously, one of those passengers was the diseased brickmaker, Mr. Mason. The other was the accused, Magnus McGilden. Well, rather damning circumstances to say the least. Defendant, what say you?
Well, of course, I have no recollection of such a thing. Mr. McGilden! To be sure, I rode the omnibus that evening, but whenever I'm in a carriage, I'm taken with a fierce tiredness and I'm always succumb to it.
Are you claiming to have been asleep?
'Tis the motion of the carriage, my lord, Lieutenant, so it is, and when I opened my eyes again, 'twas a desperate sight before me, the body of a man I never laid eyes on before in me life. Now I ask you, what good heart and soul wouldn't rush to help a fella bleeding from his stomach? I wasn't about to start worrying about my gloves now, was I? I reached out to give the man a hand. So the blood got onto the gloves then after the man had been killed.
Unfortunately, that statement of the driver is only the beginning.
What? That's not all of it?
There were multiple witnesses to the precise moment at which the brickmaker was fatally stabbed. But there were only 2 passengers! And the driver! Order! Order! When the killing took place, only the victim and the accused were inside the carriage, and there were witnesses to the crime. This is not just a case of compelling evidence. It's the nail in the coffin for the accused. Thank you, counsel. The circumstances of the crime have been made quite clear. I think we will hear testimony from these witnesses first of all. Your wish is my command. Bailiff, bring the witnesses in at once. An old man? I'm assuming you're the driver? And someone else? Witnesses, your names and occupation. My name is, well, everyone calls me Bippo. I drive an omnibus in the East End. He's the driver? Bruce Fairplay. I'm a baker in the city. My name is Fuss. Lady Fuss. Lady First? I, make hats for gents. Let's begin by confirming the facts. 3 days ago, at a short time after 10 o'clock in the evening, all of you present in the stand were in an omnibus and witnessed an aforementioned incident. Is that correct? Yes, sir. Quite right. Yes, sir. That's right, sir. Very well then. Let's proceed to your formal testimonies, please. Each of you will tell the court precisely what you saw. Unless we're not doing one-on-one, but 3 guys at once. Witness testimony. It is the late bus of the evening, so I had a few customers I remember. The victim and the man accused of killing him were sat next to each other inside the bus. Then out of the blue, the accused just reached over and plunged a knife right to the guts. That's right. He stabbed him. I screamed. I did. I couldn't help it. As soon as I heard the scream, I stopped my bus, and I then saw it too. Unambiguous testimony, I must say. Exactly, my lord. These men witnessed the incident in the omnibus with their own eyes. I'd like to ask a question, if I may. Yes, counsel? Well, this testimony makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. Why not? Well, the incident took place inside a moving carriage, didn't it? As has been clearly stated from the outset, yes. Well, in that case, how could those 2 witnesses possibly have seen what happened? There's no way they could have seen the inside of the moving carriage. We're dumb, aren't we? We're dumb, aren't we? How quaint. I read that civilization in the Eastern Island nations was a good century behind our own. But you're in London yourself. Are you really so ignorant about our omnibuses? Huh? Tell me, my Nipponese friend, have you ever traveled in an omnibus? Well, no. Only arrived in London this morning. No matter. I've arranged for us all to see for ourselves the actual scene of the crime, that is. What do you mean? The actual scene? How? A carriage is designed to be moved, after all. Presumably you understand that much. Yes. The omnibus in which this bloody crime took place is here today, is this very building. Here? What? The entire carriage? Bailiff! Bring forth the stricken omnibus. Yo! Lord Fifth Avenue. Baker Street. So that's an omnibus. The omnibus. I can't believe they bring something so enormous in here. Great Britain's courtrooms are amazing. As you can see, the omnibus is pulled by 2 horses and can carry up to 8 passengers. But didn't you just say 2 at a time? 4 passengers seated in the enclosed cabin and another 4 on top of the deck above. Every Londoner knows that's the best view of the city's architecture and sights are to be had from the top of the omnibus. And I should point out to the foreign guests that there is a skylight in the roof, allowing a view of the interior from the seats above. Ah, skylight. Oh! The penny drops at last, I see. These 2 gentlemen were occupying the rooftop seats on the omnibus when the murder took place. That is how they came to witness the grim incident. Through the skylight. That makes perfect sense. Well, Counsel, this is the first. In all my years behind bench, I have never experienced a crime scene itself being brought into the courtroom. There are a number of important clues remaining inside the carriage, my lord. I would like to submit the omnibus itself as evidence. That is the prosecution's wish. Very well. I see no reason why not. The omnibus is hereby formally accepted as evidence. I can't believe it. The entire crime scene entered as evidence? Yes, Great Britain is extremely extraordinary. I could help myself a lot by giving that omnibus a thorough examination, seeing as it is here. Let's continue with proceedings then. Your cross-examination, counsel? Pray don't expect this Nepalese stray to understand the intricacies of British courts and cross-examination rights. I have no idea what I'm saying. Alright, my first cross-examination in British court. Focus, Ryunosuke. Focus. Alrighty then. What the witness saw. It was the last bus of the evening, so I had a few customers. I remember it. The victim and the man accused of killing him were sat next to each other inside the bus. Then, out of the blue, the accused just reached over and plunged a knife right into the guts. That's right, he stabbed him. I screamed. I did. I couldn't help. As soon as I heard the scream, I stopped my bus, and then I saw it too. All we can do is just press to figure out what the hell we're doing. An armband? Thrice fried mason, 54, brickmaker, time of death, stabbed once in the abdomen with a knife while journeying in the omnibus, died due to internal hemorrhage resulting from trauma. Interesting. This is definitely blood, isn't it? Not the most pleasant sight to be confronted with our first day in London. Well, nothing will come of grumbling now. No, by the way, is Mr. McGilder right-handed? Yes, I believe so. He was toying with a coin in his right hand a little earlier. Huh, pity. If only he'd been left-handed. I think blood on either glove would be fairly incriminating, really. Nothing out of the ordinary. Alright then. Can we look at the can we look inside of the thing? You can clearly see inside the carriage through this opening, that's for sure. Yes, and there's a lamp in the enclosed cabin. So I'm sure the witness would have been able to see quite clearly. That's not good for us. Anything else to look? I think we can see the bloodshed inside. Yeah, we can see it barely. Just barely.
Well, let's open the door and go inside, shall we? The scene of the murder. It's horrible. Oh my god.
They just closed the door on us.
That's blood that's soaked into the seat. The victims, obviously. Yes, and that seat would be clearly visible from the roof deck. Would you really stab somebody in full view of the other passengers just like that, I wonder? Well, it was after dark, and there was a lamp on in here, so perhaps the culprit couldn't see anything outside through the skylight. Whichever way you look at it, it doesn't seem like it was a planned attack. Huh? Ah, that's a poster for the great exhibition that's due to start 6 months from now. There's a lot of focus being drawn to the Crystal Tower, the centerpiece of the whole exposition. Oh, the Crystal Tower. It's under construction already, I believe. People all over London must be... Whatever, this is not important. I know I should be, like, investigating. But... Can I pull this thing? This seat has a handle, it seems. Yo, luggage! This looks like all sorts of equipment that might be needed to keep the omnibus running. Feeding tubes, tools to repair wheels, blankets, horse shed, showing tools. That's a storage compartment for the coachman to keep these things, it seems. There doesn't seem to be any space for passengers to stow the luggage, for sure. Well, I don't imagine it would be very convenient for that purpose anyway. You see the skylight. It's quite a large skylight, isn't it? Yeah, it's quite large enough to afford a good view into the cabin from the roof deck. And there doesn't appear to be a handle or catch of any description. So I suppose I can't open from the inside cabin at least. I don't think there's anything else I would have to do. Am I able to, like... Nope. Check for anything else, or is it just like that? Alright, back to the freaking thing. Alright, back to what we need to do. It was the last bus of the evening, so I had a few customers I remembered well. The victim and the man accused of killing him were sat next to each other inside the bus. Hold it! And you saw them through the skylight in the roof of the carriage? Huh? What is this? The pursuit moment. That's right. When you sit up the top of the deck, the window's right there at your feet. There was a lamp on inside, so I had a pretty good view. The two of them were wearing hats, and I couldn't make out exactly out their faces. But there's not a shred of doubt in my mind that it was Mr. McGilded. How can you be so sure? Well, how can I put politely? Mr. McGilded is a gentleman, or rather a small stature. I couldn't have mistaken him for anyone else. Let's not forget that when the vehicle came to a halt, the only people inside the enclosed cabin were the deceased Mr. Mason and Mr. McGilded. There is no room for doubt there. I really wish there was. But there was a moment for us to pursue. Then out of the blue, the accused just reached over and plunged a knife into his guts. Hold it! You actually saw the exact moment it happened? Didn't I already testify to that? So we're able to do that, gotcha. Or a fair dinkum, hard-working city bankers not considered trustworthy these days. Oh, no, I didn't mean that. This is no good. I really got his backup. Perhaps you could just tell us what you saw a little more detail if that's... My lord. Huh? Drawer number 3? What's the meaning of this? My mind is made up, my lord. Completely and utterly made up. Made up about what? I don't like the stinking rich. Never have. They've always put up to something or other that shouldn't be, every one of them. And that little leprechaun of a man is no exception. Well, he can't fool me. What is going on? There's no point wasting time listening to any more of this. That's my opinion on the matter anyway. That's precisely what I'm about to say.
As the foreman of the jury, it's my duty to set a good example of my fellow jurors. What is happening here? So we can't even press for more answers? It seems that how the members of the jury give their verdicts. With fire? Apparently, yes. White for innocent and black for guilty. As the 6 members of the jury make up their minds about the case, only one by one they each cast a ball of fire into the great scales of justice as we saw a moment ago. So if those enormous scales fall completely on the black side, does that mean... Let's do our best to make sure that doesn't happen. Now I'm even more worried than I was before. Very well. The court acknowledges the change in the jury stance. Counsel for the defense, please continue. This is a nightmare. That's right, he stabbed him. I screamed. I did. I couldn't help it.
Hold it!
He stabbed him, you say? And you were sitting up on the roof deck, were you?
Excuse me!
Oh, wait a minute. If I may, Mr. Fairplay. Please don't tell me it. Please don't tell me that. Please don't. Please don't penalize us on that. That has nothing to do with this. I was just trying to see if we can let him talk while we looked around.
Hold it!
Yeah, we're just gonna move on to the next thing. What exactly did you see? Well, sir, that would be a passenger. Yes, the collapse on the floor. And by the passenger, obviously, you are referring to the victim, Mr. Mason, the bookmaker. And then the other passenger had the knife in his hand, like this. By the other passenger, obviously, you are referring to the accused. And then plunge it down like this, stabbing the other passenger in the belly. What? How could you see when... My lord, if you'll forgive the interruption. Another one? Mr. McGill is a pillar of society and a gentleman where blah 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 blah. However, those of us in service know we must accept hard truths. Wait, what are you about to do? Dispose of the rubbish. No. I don't wish to cause offense, but I do like to eradicate all traces of filth and grime. Oh, it's game over for us. It's game over. So we can't even press for whatsoever. We can't press for answers. We have to go on the fly? Not again. There are only 2 left. We've had it. Every time I press the witnesses for more information, I just make the situation worse. Nevertheless, what we need more than anything at the moment is more information. We're still very much in the dark. I suppose I'll just have to keep pressing the witnesses, knowing that more sparks may fly. But... alright, I'll keep trying. I can't give up. I just need to keep calm and listen to the witnesses' statements again. Bruh! Alright, so when it happened, the only 2 people in the enclosed cabin area were the victim and the defendant. And, so help me, 3 whole people witnessed the man I'm trying to defend to the deed. I don't like to be pessimistic, but we do seem to be in a rather difficult situation here. What am I supposed to do? Think here. Is Mr. McGiller really innocent? Or could it be... Before we jump to conclusion, our first task should be to gather information. We need to understand the case much better than we do at this moment. You're absolutely right. Let's listen to those witnesses' statements again, a little more carefully this time. Man, how did we get into this? Hold up. Let's present. He said he saw it. So the guy is right here. Okay, he's right there, doing his job. And he says he saw it too. From this point of view. Wait. The Phoenix Wright Omnibus? Yo! Oh no, that was cool. The victim and the man accused of killing him were sat next to each other inside the bus. Then out of the blue, the accused just reached over and plunged a knife right into the guts. We were interrupted during this point, right?
Hold it!
Let me double check. Anything weird? Why don't you ask the young man next to me? Oh, me? Well, yes.
Hold it!
Yes, I think it was sometime after 10, wasn't it? It was so cold, it was freezing in fact. And you had 4 passengers on board at the time. Is that correct? Yes, that's right. Not all traveling in the same time. Parts of the bus, of course. And there were no other passengers when the incident took place. No one alighted, for example. You're quite right with that, sir. No other pictures like that. None. So nobody fled the scene of the crime then. I have to say, the boss insists on it running. He does. Every evening. That last bus of the day. But I do wonder sometimes if it's altogether worthwhile. Yes, sorry to say. What do you mean by that? Well, what with it being so cold and everything, and only making it 20 pence on the run, you see. Yes, I spent that much on that pub on the way home, just trying to warm up again. We got no clues! And then he saw it too. He stabbed him, blah blah blah. Oh no! The jury looked like they were even more convinced my client did it than they were before. That appears to have made everyone even more dubious that Mr. McGilda is telling the truth. If only we had some evidence to counter their suspicions. Mr. First. Oh, yes, sir? It's just the knife you saw? Oh, good grief. Yes, that's it. The very one, sir. Is that? Yes, counsel. This is the blade that was driven into the victim's belly like a stake through the heart. That is a blade of considerable size, counsel. It is, and furthermore, the scabbard is embolized prominently with a certain initial. The letter M, which means oddly familiar. Please no. Mem for Magnus, perhaps, or McGilded, possibly. Take your pick. It seems the particular big names in London made a magnificent mistake. But there are M's everywhere. Like, yes. Like in Mason.
Objection!
This blade is far too extravagant for a poor brickmaker to have his own. No, this weapon of murder almost certainly belongs to the accused. Not conclusive, but certainly compelling, counsel. Oh hey, we finally got something in the court record. Oh, come on! The idea of murder being committed in one of the city's carriages is definitely abhorrent to me. It wouldn't be right to make a decision before hearing all the facts, though, I said to myself. But I've heard enough now. No, please, just keep an open mind a little. This ain't fair. All I'm good for is freaking press questions because I'm so dumb. I'm so dumb that I can't figure this out on my own with just pressing alone. It's already bad as it is. It's 5-1. If that's the case.
Yes, dear, what can I do for you?
You have heard the testimonies of the witnesses in the stand.
Oh, yes, I certainly have. Still got my hearing, you know.
Then pray tell why you yet to pronounce your leaning.
Well, dear, the thing is, I'm a creature of habit. Me. I always go to the park at around that time of day and sit on a nice bench and get on with my knitting. There's a lovely little park just near where I live. McGilded Park, it's called. The gentleman donated it to the city, you know, to put a smile on Londoner's face, he said. I can imagine such a fine young gentleman would have it in him to take another man's life.
I guess this is a way of making us progress. Public library? How many Londoners live with their heads in the clouds? Do you people not know? What kind of a man Magnus McGilded really is?
What kind of a man is he?
The philanthropist Magnus McGilded has enough wealth to purchase the entire city he claims to value so highly. But where did all that wealth come from? Your client is Shylock, sir, and one with very darkest of souls.
What? Stone the crows.
McGilded lends money at extortionate rates of interest, so his victims have no hope of repaying him. When they default, he takes possession of everything they own. He is a vulture that preys on the weak.
I've never heard any mention of that before.
Your faculties haven't deserted you, I'm sure, madam. So has this thought not crossed your mind? Would a man wealthy enough to buy London in its entirety not have a carriage of his own? What possible reason could this man have had to make a use of public omnibus service? You're not saying that. The victim, a poor brickmaker, had next to nothing to make his name, save considerable financial liability. It will come to no surprise that his creditor was the accused Magnus McGilded. But let it also be known that the very day Mr. Mason was killed was the final repayment date for his debts. Good gracious! The brickmaker was destitute. He had lost his house. He had not a shilling with which to repay his debts. And in the end, this pitiful soul had the very last thing he owned taken from him, his life. By the merciless philanthropist, pretender Magnus McGilded.
I don't believe it. If I might add something briefly, Mr. Sato? You claim that the victim had been lent money by Mr. McGilded. Well, where is the evidence to support your claim?
Wine? Red wine. Pray forgive the discordity of filling my hollow chalice in a court of law. Aha, there it is! Lord Von Zyk's hollow chalice.
How can this be considered acceptable?
Well, I find myself in unexpectedly good humor. I had heard ladies from the Far East could show great courage, but I didn't expect to experience it myself.
Ah! As a judicial assistant to the defense, I am simply doing my job.
What a pity that your display of courage is in vain. This is the debitor's ledger, which details all monies loaned by the accused. You will find the victim's name clearly recorded inside. Allow me to present this ledger as evidence. And pray forgive the discourtesy of raising my chalice in toast to the enigmatic East at the same time. As marvelous toast, Consul, I will gladly accept this new evidence. The debtor's ledger has been added to the court record. Ah yes, 20 guineas. The victim owed considerable sum, and the accused made quite certain he had ample recompense.
Well, it would seem I've had the wool pulled over my eyes.
Regrettably, madam, that is the modus operandi of the accused.
And it's such pretty little part too. What a scoundrel. And we lose! Still, we lose! Maybe it's all for the best.
Wait a minute! Let's think about it a little bit more.
I don't stand for nonsense. We lose!
Is there like a specific order that we need to do? That was it. The last juror's decision. Was that like the last thing what we need to do? That we need to select a certain place to press on? According to the Encyclopedia of British Law, when all members of the jury have concluded that the defendant is guilty, court proceedings are suspended, and the presiding judge will deliver the final verdict and sentence. That's what it says here. The final verdict. It's over then.
Oh. There's a footnote, though.
A footnote?
However, the defense...
All 6 members of the jury are now in agreement in the case. Tell me the footnote, please, before they give the final verdict. Allow me to convey my respect for your swift and righteous decision. According to the laws of this country, I will not now conclude the trial by delivering the final verdict. I trust there are no objections. Please tell me what the footnote is. Mr. Sato, just tell me one thing.
Oh, yes?
You were in the middle of saying something before. The footnote in your Encyclopedia of British Law. However, the defense... What did you say? What did it say next?
One moment. When all members of the jury have concluded that the defendant is guilty, court proceedings are suspended, and the presiding judge will deliver the final verdict and sentence. Then the footnote says, however, the defense has the right to demand a summation examination of the jurors at this point.
What does that mean? We have hope? A summation? Examination?
Objection!
Did he just heard it? A summation examination? From which century has that tome you have been resurrected? Whatever! Judging from the binding, I would say that book is at least 50 years old. Any modern text of British law wouldn't even give such an antiquated procedure a mention. It's a relic, long forgotten, and certainly no longer practiced. So you're out of luck.
Oh.
Excuse me. What even is it, Mr. Sato? This so-called summation examination.
Oh, one moment. I'll read about it.
You would demand the right to procedure before you even understand what it entails? Typical Nipponese.
Alright, Mr. Naruhodo, I think I understand. It seems that under the procedure, we would be able to appeal to the members of the jury.
To do what exactly?
Appeal them to change their leaning and reverse their decisions. And it says here that if successful, the proceedings of the trial must be resumed.
Make them reverse their decisions? Yes, in times gone by, barristers would use a summation examination to attempt to influence the juror's decision. When the procedure became something of a formality with no practical benefit, really, so it rather fell out of use.
Wonder why.
Because it was devoid of purpose. Changing just one member of the jury's mind would be hard enough, let alone several. No self-respecting defense barrister would even assert his right to try in this day of age.
Still, I don't see any mention of the procedure actually being formally revoked.
What are you suggesting?
I'm suggesting that although it may be antiquated and largely forgotten, it isn't yet extinct. What do you think, Mr. Naruhodo?
A summation examination, our last possible option. Do we assert our rights to carry it out or admit defeat? We'll hold it right there, ladies and gentlemen, because this has been a long trial. So we'll hold it off right there. In the next episode, we'll assert our right. So like, comment, subscribe, Chronicles TV, and I'm signing out.